remember the last time we met, you were talking about the Iqamah in the year. I asked you if that set up a lifelong process of ibadah, a lifelong way of worship. Is there a way that we can start teaching our kids a lifelong pattern of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
You know what you just said is really absolutely true, that the first words the child would hear is the adhan and the iqamah and so on. It's like, you're setting up your child from the very beginning. And this is a privilege for Muslims who receive their children in a Muslim society, where they get to hear the adhan 5 times a day, versus Muslims who live in a non-Muslim society, where they barely, or sometimes they don't even hear the adhan period for years. And that's why we recommend at least you have one of those devices which call adhan whenever it's a prayer time. It's a beautiful thing to hear the call of adhan. It's a reminder that ibadah is due and so on. And in addition to the reminder, it carries a great meaning. So you get to seize the opportunity to explain to your children the meaning of every verse of the adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. Then the word of the oneness of Allah, and the word that testifies that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger of Allah. And that come to prayer where there is success in the prayer and so on. It's just a beautiful thing. Similarly with the iqamah. I have noticed that, this is a very interesting fact, that I have noticed that the children will be able to copy the parents in the acts of the prayer as early as the age of 1.5 years to 2 years. And you know what is the most beautiful scene ever in home? Is when you're praying and without any previous introduction, all of a sudden you see your child who's 1.5 years starting copying you, making sujood and so on. It's just so beautiful.
I have a nephew of mine. When I pray, he used to come and stand behind me and pray, imitating me, coming with my prayer. But I want to know, when shall I teach him the proper way of prayer?
Sure, but before that, you just reminded me with a very interesting thing, that the Prophet ﷺ once was praying, and whether Al-Hasan or Al-Hussein came and he climbed over his back. So the Prophet ﷺ took so long in the sujood that the companions, some of them thought that the Prophet ﷺ passed away because it took him so long. So later on they inquired, what happened, Ya Rasulullah, what took you so long? It was such a long sujood. He said, well, my son was riding on my back and I just hated to interrupt him. How beautiful. It's just...
This reminds me of things that happen in the States all the time. Like, we would go to the masjid, me and my daughter, and the brothers there would sometimes be very rough with her. Be like, what is this kid doing in this masjid? This is a masjid. And I'd always say, Hassan Hussein used to ride on my back.
It happened to my country, my village. A guy came and yelled at the people, threw them out of the mosque, don't come here.
Well, in fact, we have to keep balance. Yes, it's important and necessary to bring our children to the masjid as early as maybe 2 years old and make them get used to the environment, seeing people praying. But meanwhile, we have to make sure that they will not disturb the prayer, especially if there's a fard prayer or Salatul Jum'ah and so forth, if there is a speech. So one thing which is very interesting I've seen in the Western societies, they have like a babysitting place with a window that the children could see the parents, so they feel safe around. However, the parents and the rest of the community are offering the prayer in peace. But when you bring your children and bring mine, and they start making like a kindergarten there, and then you don't reflect on anything on the prayer. You're totally disturbed.
All you hear is
you don't do it often.
Running back and forth.
So you assign a younger kid who can take care of them, sit in a babysitting room and so on, where prayer is essential for adults. Then we can come to your question, Brother Osama, which is how early should we teach our kids how to pray? The Prophet ﷺ was reported as saying that علموا أولادكم الصلاة لسبع. That Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, recorded the Prophet ﷺ as saying that teach your prayers the salah as early as the age of 7. وَضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ, and discipline them to offer the salah regularly at the age of 10. I don't want you to understand that or get the concept that we should not really address our children with the salah before the age of 7. No. We're talking about teach them as how to pray properly now, regularly, perform the proper wudu and stand up straight and bow down the proper way and so on at the age of 7. Then at the age of 10, they should be praying regularly, like an adult. But before that, as I said that, I mean, it's a very beautiful feeling when I saw my son, a year and 6 months, started coming next to me and copying me exactly, you know.
It is a beautiful thing to see. I have my 3-year-old, she prays the complete prayer with me. So if it's like, you know, if we're praying for her, she stands, puts her little foot next to my foot, puts her hands up, and prays the whole thing. And then my 1-year-old
this
does
is actually the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that every child is born on the pure creed and the pure fitrah. But it is his parents who would make him a Jew or a Christian or otherwise. Similarly, for a child who is born to Muslim parents, but they're not practicing the deen, what's going to happen?
It's going to leave.
Exactly. I've met people at the age of 45 have never observed fasting in their life.
Wow.
Then when they came to Islam and Allah opened their hearts to guidance and so on, it was extremely difficult on them to fast. One of them said to me that I have never ever in my life learned when did Ramadan begin, when did it end, at all. And now I'm asking him to start fasting for 30 days in a row, from dawn till sunset. You know, it's very, very difficult. And that's why learning at a very young age is easier, much easier than learning while you're a teenager, than much easier than when you're an adult. Similarly with the prayer. This guy came to the masjid as an accident, that he had a son who died and so on. So they came for the funeral. And of course he didn't know anything about the prayer. And he was so embarrassed. Most likely that embarrassment made him even reluctant further to come for any other prayer when he was an adult. But only one reason brought him, which is the death of his son. So of course we take it from there. Imagine if you were raised since your childhood on practicing the salah on time, joining your father while he's going to the masjid. You know, today is Friday and you're dressing up white, wearing your nice thawb and going for the salah. It's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, I have a question. How, if he, before the age of 7, and he commits mistakes in prayer and, you know, moving here and there, shall I correct him directly when he does these things? Or?
You know, this is very interesting because I see some parents, they like to get more and more from their children, but we need to raise this banner where we keep it in our mind and in front of our eyes. Your son is not you. Your son is not you. Your daughter is not you. There's so much differences between you both, okay? Yeah. And we have to take it gradually. So instead of picking on what was wrong and the mistakes, rather say, MashaAllah, that was so beautiful. Look at you. You were standing straight in the salah, you just pick on what was positive. You know, the good things, the good moves, which the
make
child
them love this a lot.
Exactly.
That's how you coach someone.
Yeah, you're coaching football, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You did a great job, but this little thing...
I wouldn't even consider but for now. I would just mention what was positive and put emphasis on their way of performing the salah and so on, and I'm so impressed. Imagine the great effect on the child praising him for such an act. He will be waiting anxiously for the next prayer to show you much better than the previous one.
I always give my daughter a big hug and I go, oh, you did all 4 rak'ah, it's great. I'm so happy. And she's like, big, you know, smile you know, from ear to ear. You know, she's just so happy that you know,
the child can't wait for the next prayer to show you a better job. And can't wait to memorize Surah Al-Fatiha and.
Yeah.
Okay, will he receive the word for prayer or me?
Well, a person is not necessarily required to offer the ibadat, especially prayers, of course, until the age of puberty. Yes. However, if a child perfects the tahara, the purity, performing ablution and so on, and perfects the salah, before that, his salah is valid and counts as a reward for him and for the parents.
The righteous parent.
وَوَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ.
I want to ask something. So when shall I be harsh on the kid? Like, when shall I start, you know, like punishing him if he's not praying right or if he's not...
You know, one is really recommended to keep the word harsh and punishment in a storage room. Okay, lock it up. Do not use it whenever you feel like, you know, you're frustrated with your child. Just remember that your child is not you. It's just a child. Okay? Try always to find any other alternative. And there are so many other alternatives besides a frown face, screaming, shouting, and sometimes hitting or beating, Make this the last resolution ever. Always try to recommend other, solutions. Bring the concept of reward instead of the concept of punishment. So when your child is 7 years old and he starts praying with you, it's not mandatory upon him to pray. You start instructing him. And by the time he reaches the age of 10, he will be praying as good as you. Exactly.
Yeah, but sometimes he might, be sleeping. He doesn't want to wake up. Kids sometimes on Friday, if I want to take him with me to the prayers, like stuff like that. What would I do?
I'm glad you brought up the issue of sleeping while praying, because this is not only limited to children. The Prophet ﷺ said even for adults, لِيُصَلِّ أَحَدُكُمْ نَشَاطَهُ فَإِذَا كَسُلَ فَلْيَرْقُدْ. Let one of you pray as much as you feel fresh and comfortable. But if you feel sleepy and lazy, this is for the voluntary prayer, then rest. Similarly, if the child cannot wake up, and if the child did not get enough rest, that will take us to another area, which is putting the right schedule for the child, as what time should he go to bed, what time should he get up, and so on, so that he will get up early for Salatul Fajr. And if he takes as little as 6 hours in a row of sleep, it will not be a problem to get up for Salatul Fajr. And start the day ever since.
What age shall I start waking him up to pray with me?
Well, this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said at the age of 7.
7.
But children vary. If you notice that there is a response, positive response from your child, that he or she willingly came to join you in the salah, and you notice that there is an improvement every time. So I think he's inviting you to teach him.
Exactly.
You should not wait and say, no, not 5. Before the age of 7.
No, go sleep. You don't have to pray now.
You're only 5. Come back.
As a matter of fact, some parents do that. Say, well, it's not for kids. It's not for kids.
Wow.
I remember that my parents used to say, you have to go and pray in the masjid. And we were very young. We would go to the masjid, and there was this guy who was the keeper of the masjid who wouldn't like any kids in the masjid, and he would kick us out. Sometimes he would pick us up and just throw us outside the masjid.
This is crazy.
This is not a very good thing to do, because guess what?
You just made a lot of non-Muslims.
Exactly. He went straight with this guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine that seeing a child copying the father. That's a good sign. Also, a child may copy the father in bad things. That's why the father...
Kind of like my manners here, without offering you guys something to drink, as always. Would you like some tea or some coffee or something like that, inshallah?
Well, I would like some Nescafe.
Some Nescafe, inshallah. Osama?
Okay, Nescafe.
I have something cold.
Something cold? I don't know if I have something cold. Let me go check in the fridge and see what I have this
You gotta find something, man. You gotta find something in
inshallah. I'll be back, inshallah.
خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. Learning how to recite the Quran properly, learning the meaning of what we recite, concluding the ahkam from the verses which we recite, trying to implement what we learn in our daily life. Would listen to the participants and the guests. We'll take your phone calls. We're going to recite live. We'll listen to your recitation, and we'll correct it according to the rules and regulations which we'll state in each episode. Now, your dream will come true.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You must
Welcome
be doing
back.
it by yourself.
You came from the
Jazakallah
other side.
khairan.
Yes, it's a nice place I have here. Maybe I'll take you on a tour when the Sheikh leaves. It's very spacious, very large.
Yeah. I took this tour last week.
Inshallah, that's very nice. Yeah, Sheikh,
MashaAllah.
Good
Nescafe.
Oh, Jazakallah khair. I'll tell my wife. Ramadan is coming quickly, and I was planning on making my daughter start to fast half days. She's 3 years old. Okay. And this might make me a Wahhabi extremist. But she's 3 days old, and I'm thinking about making her start to fast half days to start to learn the joy of Ramadan, waking her up, have suhoor with us, and then when she wakes up around 10, let her, wait 2 hours and then she can eat like around noon.
You brought up a very important subject, which is to teach gradually. As I mentioned about the person who is 45 years old and have never fasted, and now he's supposed to start fasting and so on. This is kind of difficult. For my child who's 3 and 4 years old, you can start by saying, you're going to fast for 1 meal. You're going to skip 1 meal. You're not going to have breakfast. You're going to have breakfast, and you're going to have lunch, and so on. And you applaud the practice of the child, and you reward them for that. And you consider it a big deal. Oh, my son was fasting today. Asma was fasting today. The whole family will celebrate that and will reward the child. So the child will be very interested in even prolonging the period of fasting. So you can start as early as the child can bear that. 1 hour, 2 hours, half day, and now you're going to organize it according to the prayer time. I'm fasting until Dhuhr prayer. No. So the child is anxiously waiting for the adhan of Dhuhr. Why? Because that's the time of breaking his fast. Similarly, charity. I really recommend for the brothers and sisters in my community that, if you're going to put a donation in the donation box, make a point that you put it before you're a child.
But listen, before going to this point, I want to ask, does the fast is like the same of prayer? To teach him to fast till the age of 7 and punish him by the age of 10? Or?
No, you see, for fasting, the ulama sometimes they apply fasting to Salah and so on according to the hadith. But remember, whether it's fasting, it's a prayer, it's only mandatory at the time of
puberty,
not before that. Okay? So he's not required by the law, the Islamic law, that to observe fasting on every single day of Ramadan until he reaches the puberty age. But alhamdulillah wa shukrullah, I have in my community and some friends, their children, the age of 6, 7, they fast for the entire month.
MashaAllah.
And they compete. When there is a sense of competition, who's fasting today and so on, and that's applauded and rewarded.
Yeah, exactly.
What I was saying about the charity is, if anyway you're going to pay a donation to the masjid or to any organization, have your children participate and play a role in paying the donation. Your child is, 3-4 feet tall. Pick up your child and give him the money. Have him deposit the money in the donation box. That will give him the sense of giving and being generous. This is how you teach your child generosity. Whenever you have a guest, ask your child that we have to bring the best of what we have for our guest. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ was the most generous man, and so on. So, be yourself a role model.
I remember my mom used to do that with me, because on Ramadan, or sometimes we pass by the what you call it, the cups, not the cups, the small cups, the ones on the street, the asakir, what do you call them?
Soldiers,
not soldiers. Guards, the ones that stand for the line, for the lights and stuff. They're very poor people and stuff. So my mom used to give me, when I was very young, the boxes for food for them for the fasting. So till now, alhamdulillah, sometimes I do that, because I learned it when I was really young, and then I do it.
So would you tell us the impact of this practice when you were young on your life now? How do you feel towards the poor people?
It's amazing, because the way I treat, for me, I don't have poor or rich people. I treat everybody the same. And that's what I learned from my parents, because they were very, our house was always open for anyone to come in, and, if anybody needs something, every month, I see a lot of people coming to take some, sadaqah and stuff. And my mom and my dad, they let me do it with them, even dabh. Like my father intended for me to attend it, and since I was very young, and now I do it on my own. It feels.
Ismail, I think it's a good opportunity also to seize this opportunity and address your child, your daughter, as you let her fast for an hour or two. That at the time of eating, were you hungry? Yes, of course, because fasting is about hunger. Well, guess what? There are a lot of people who are extremely hungry. and there is no time for breaking their fast because actually there is no food for them. How about saving some money and buying some food and sending this food to them? By that we accomplish the meaning of fasting.
Yeah.
You know, assisting and helping.
You were saying earlier about people doing bad also and how it affects the children. So if you withhold your money
Yeah.
and you teach your children to be stingy, if you smoke cigs, you teach your children to smoke cigs,
Yeah.
things like this. The same applies, right?
You know, that's true. Many parents think that my kids are good because they force them to be this way in front of them. And once they're absent and the kids behind closed doors, they're on their own. And that's why the parents have to be really intelligent and refer to their children a bigger supervision. Not only the supervision of the parents, of somebody around them, no. The supervision of Allah, the Almighty, the divine supervision.
I'll see you all
I
here.
remember visiting a friend's house. He had a son in high school. I have read on a paper, a copy paper, which was not a frame or anything, and with handwriting. I have read the most beautiful statement which a man might write for his son or daughter. The statement read in Arabic, لست وحدك, Allahu ma'ak,
Yes.
which translates as, you're not alone, Allah is with you. This statement shocked me. My skin was shivering when I read that statement, that your son or your daughter are always under the impression that they're not alone. So whether they're being supervised by a human being or not, they're being seen and watched by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That makes the person always in the favor
Look
of
up.
doing something which would please Allah subhanahu
Yeah,
wa
look
ta'ala.
up for him.
So you don't have to say, make sure that you don't turn the TV on. Make sure that you don't chat on the internet. And you leave and you know that he or she might do the opposite. This is very, very much possible.
Yeah, of course.
And you can bring this to the mind of the children through stories. Like, you know, the story of Sayyiduna Musa alayhi salam and his
The
brother
Prophet stories
Harun.
are amazing
Yeah.
for kids.
There is a particular point in this story when Allah appointed Musa and Harun, peace be upon them, and He commanded them to go to the Pharaoh. So Musa talk on behalf of himself and his brother, saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّا نَخَافُ أَن يَفْرُطَ عَلَيْنَا أَوْ أَن يَطْغَى. We're afraid that he might transgress against us, he might even kill us. So there, you bring this story to the mind of your children and make them live it. Then all of a sudden, you bring the beautiful answer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, to Musa alayhi salam and his brother Harun, قال لا تخافا إنني معكما أسمع وأرى. Hey, don't you be afraid, Ya Musa, don't you fear. Why? Because I am with you. Who's saying so? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the child is listening to the story and is very excited about what's next. He knows that the Pharaoh could do anything. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping balance, saying, don't you worry, don't you be afraid the least. Since I am with you, I'm going to be with you. Asma wa ara. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be seen in this life. I cannot visualize Him, but He can see me. I cannot hear Him talking because I'm not Prophet Moses, but He can hear me, even if I'm alone behind closed doors. So if you can bring this concept to the mind of your children, then you're safe and you are at peace.
The one that really drove that whole concept home for me was the story of Abu Bakr and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave.
Exactly.
You know, He said, the third with us. Well, this who? The third is always Allah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Even Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was scared and said that if any of them looks down, they would see us. So the Prophet ﷺ answered him, Ya Abu Bakr, what do you think about two? Allah is their third. You know, through stories you can bring any concept
Exactly.
of good meaning to the mind of your children. It cannot be done by dictating to them and saying, hey, Allah is with you. You have to fear Allah. Instead of putting the concept of fear, put first the concept of love. And then that will take us to another area, which is, why do we have to love Allah? I remember when I was a child once, my dad took me for a walk, and we passed under a bridge where trains were running above the bridge. Then my dad asked me a question. He said, how do you like this bridge? I said, it's so huge. It's magnificent. He said, who do you think that he architected and built the bridge? So I was talking about the builders, and then my father said, no, it was an architect who studied so much and graduated from an engineering school to be able to design this bridge. So I wonder how much time, effort took that architect and engineer to design that thing, to acquire the proper knowledge. And this is just for a bridge. Then my father brought to my attention the bigger picture. The bigger picture, which is the sky. Look up. Do you see any pillars? No. Do you see any hooks and ropes holding the sky? No. I wonder, how has it been done this way, without pillars, without supports, without anything? Then the architect in this case is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it's very important to discuss certain ayat, like the beautiful ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون. So from the bridge to the sky, then to the bigger picture, which is not only limited to the sky. No, as the ayah says, verily, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and everything in between. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the alternation of night and day. You see the process of day and night very smoothly happening, and in the sailing boats and ships in the sea, with that which is of benefit to mankind, and in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down from the heaven of the rainwater that produces vegetations and fruits, which is of use for us and for our cattle, in the wind, in the clouds which are hanging between the heavens and the earth. Those are all signs for people who reflect. So now you emphasize on the importance of reflecting, thinking, pondering. That can be done as early as 4 and 5 years old. And of course,
I think it's time for us to go to the masjid. The comment was a couple minutes ago.
Well then, inshallah, we'll continue next time. Thank you so much for inviting me once again. May Allah bless you and your family. Barakallahu feekum.
I have a question, but I think the time passed. Thank you.
Tomorrow Osama.
I'm on the way to the
Prayer,
masjid.
man, prayers. Gonna hit the basket?
No.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba